Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the show that never ends. Today's show is brought to you by Cloudberry Lab. Check them out, cloudberrylab.com/FRD for a free trial offer, and grab that before it is gone. Speaking of gone,
Hi.
this man will soon be not gone, but relocated.
Yep. I'm flying to Colorado tonight. What could go wrong?
You're flying, well, you're flying tonight, so obviously you'll be there tonight.
Yeah. Late. Really late tonight.
Yep. Speaking of things that are late, but whatever, here we are, is apparently Google and Java are still in the court cases fighting it out, and a couple lawyers were apparently popping bottles of champagne because they just racked up probably an additional 10,000 hours of billable time at
Can you
minimum.
imagine? The fees in this case must be amazing. And it's like, who cares who wins? It's just going to be crazy.
Yep. So if you're not totally familiar with that, Paul, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, which I know you have no trouble doing in your life, is Google is using some APIs from an Android that Oracle, I believe, believes that they still own, and Google should have to pay royalties, and the number they're tossing around is about 9 billion, give or take, rounding up or down. And
Did you see the latest Star Wars movie?
No, not yet.
Because there's a line in it where Luke Skywalker says, "It's amazing. Every single word in that sentence you just said is wrong." So what they're accused of stealing is source code. Hundreds and hundreds of thousands of lines of source code. Google has actually admitted to taking the source code, although Larry Page claims most of it was declarations, not what he would call real code. Yeah, the payment, will be determined by a different court, but it is going to be in the billions, and it will almost certainly be the highest copyright-related damages assessment ever made in history. I think the figure that Oracle, the latest figure, and this is from last year, I thought it was 16 billion, but I could be wrong about that. But they're actually thinking about upping it because since this case started,
Right.
the proliferation of Android devices has been so vast that the instances of abuse are in the billions of devices.
Do you recall off the top of your head what level of the courts this is in? Because I know it's gone through several iterations. It was like in a jury trial, and then now it's been overturned. And so what?
Yep.
What is the next?
This is the I don't remember which circuit, but it's the Federal Circuit of Appeals. It is the last stop before the Supreme Court. So the only potential outcome for Google to appeal now would be to the Supreme Court, I believe.
Which, for those
they've gone through every level of the court that there is.
Which, for those not aware, for the Supreme Court to actually rule on this, it has to be what they would consider a substantial case that has profound impact across the entire tech sector. They're not in the personal battle. So if they review this case and they think, hey, this actually has a dramatic impact across tech APIs and all that good stuff, then they might actually take it up. But I would not be counting on that personally.
So my gut feeling is that they will not take it up. However, there are people who believe that this has ramifications for the wider industry and that Oracle, in winning this case, will now press similar copyright cases against others that use Java, because the final battle here, because the battle has actually kind of shifted. Originally, it was, I believe, a patent infringement lawsuit that was, but whatever it was brought by Sun Microsystems back when they were still a thing in 2009. Oracle bought Sun Microsystem and expanded it to include a copyright case, which is actually what we're deciding now. Google won the original copyright case because of fair use, appealed, and then lost because the judge in that case, or I guess it was the jury in that case, determined that outright copying does not constitute fair use, which is kind of interesting. The original time they won on copyright, by the way, again, I don't remember judge, jury, but the ruling was that software code is not copyrightable, which was kind of a crazy, hold on a second here. And that was reversed. It's kind of hard to keep track of this. It's kind of amazing.
It will be, for any IP lawyers out there or wannabe intellectual property lawyers, this is the World Series, I think, is probably an appropriate way to describe this.
Yeah, I mean, you'd have to go back to the Microsoft antitrust stuff to find something as big as this. And then, had Samsung, Apple kind of petered out. That had the chance to be big. If Apple and Google had ever gone to port over Android. That could have the potential to be this big, but Apple, of course, is never going to do that. So yeah, I mean, this is going to be record setting, I think.
Yep. I'm not expecting any quick resolution to this, but I think the appropriate phrase is to be continued. Bum, bum, bum. So, moving on here, let's see. Mahedi wrote up that Microsoft is opening up the subsystem for Linux to all developers. So if you want to bring your own distro, you can now do that. It's I think that.
So what does that mean? Does that mean you have to be a stakeholder in some Linux distribution to do that, or could any Joe say, "Hey, I really like Arch Linux or whatever. I'd like that to be in there."
I believe
how does that work?
It's the latter, because in theory, the brilliance of Linux, as everybody will tell you repeatedly on Twitter, is that you can just build your own. Right? You can, in theory, grab all the stuff, make your own distribution, and now you could bring it into the store using this. I don't think this is. I want to say this is more akin to sideloading, but I'm not totally sure on that. But basically, anybody who has access to those distro bits can now bring it into the subsystem for Linux and play with it themselves.
I wonder if that's going to have any implications for the store. You could almost imagine there being 127 Linux distros in there, 125 of which are ridiculous one-offs.
Right.
Okay.
Which is why I thought it was. Let me see. Yeah, anyone can sideload their distro. So I don't think it becomes indexed.
Okay, so that's actually a big change itself, right?
Yeah.
Because before you had to go through the store.
Yep. So,
okay, that's cool. I have no problem with that.
Well, good. I'm happy that they consulted you and that you have no problem.
No, I mean, it makes sense. Like, that's good. Like, if they allowed anyone with a Linux chip on their shoulder to submit some, distribution or whatever to the store, that would be terrible. That was what I was getting at. So that's good.
No, you definitely get distros called like Windows is bad. Or
like
Google Chrome.
Right. Paul's Linux, where there's like Debian copyrights all over it. Hey, it's GPL. I will contribute every change I make back to the community. And the only change I added was I put my name in there. So enjoy that world. You are free to use it.
So closing the loop is probably the wrong term here. So I started playing this game again on the Xbox. This is PlayerUnknown's Battleground. And I'm playing it on Xbox One S because I'm too cheap and haven't bought an Xbox One X yet.
Right.
I have 120-ish hours on the PC, and so I started playing it again on the Xbox, primarily because I wanted to see, hey, is it any good? They have come a very long way, but it's still a pretty large dumpster fire at this point. But the primary reason is I've got a bunch of friends on Xbox, and they're all playing this, and so it's, I'd rather play with them than play with 4K graphics and 120 frames per second, and the better experience on the PC. But I will tell you that they've gotten it to a point now that it is actually playable. There's some bad frame rates at the very beginning of the game, but if you've been holding off, it's still very rough.
God.
But
dude, I desperately need to see an advertisement for this game that literally includes the quote, "is actually playable." BradSams.com.
Well, there would need to be an asterisk near there because it is playable after about the first 20 seconds or so, once everything kind of loads in, and as long as you're not in a firefight with more than, say, about 10 people, it's fine.
The other thing that's funny is in this view we have of our podcast where it's split in the middle, and I can see only part of that picture. I didn't realize that was the shot from PubG, and I was in the beginning of the show. I almost asked you why you had this picture of, I was going to call it a cornfield, but actually it looks like it's wheat. But I thought this was some sort of a spring photo that you were, carting out, like, see, the snow's gone. When in fact, it is a literal scene from the game.
Yep.
It's funny.
Yeah. This guy's got a very nicely outfitted weapon, too. He's got a SCAR and he's got an M4. Although I prefer the M4 of the SCAR, so I don't exactly agree with his choices in life. But, we can't all be.
You ever, you probably haven't done this in a while because you're an adult now and you have a child, but in your younger days, perhaps, when such a thing seemed like it, not only a good idea, but something that was important for you to partake in, you might have gone out on St. Patrick's Day to a local bar and people would be drinking green beer and they'd be wearing these cheap, terrible looking plastic green hats that have shamrocks on them and stuff. And I have no idea what that's from. Like, are you supposed to look like a leprechaun to Do people think Irish people wear these hats? I don't know, but you know what I'm talking about, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the difference between that guy that you just pointed to with the weaponry and the outfit on and what's going on in Call of Duty right now is that in Call of Duty right now, 50% of the players are dressed like those douches in the bars that I just described with stupid little green hats on. Because for some reason, the Call of Duty guys love St. Patrick's Day, which, by the way, was like 2 weeks ago. And the entire month of March is just like a shamrock-filled nightmare. So I am eagerly looking for the calendar to turn over to April 1st so the stupidity can end. Because I can assure you, I look at that thing and I think, nice looking, professionally made first-person shooter. And then I go into Call of Duty and I want to poke my eyes out.
You know, professional, and you might be putting a little too high on that pedestal.
Professional looking.
I mean, when the mobile version on iOS plays better than this, that's
yeah, fair enough.
But 5 million plus
it's
people
not a bad
playing
looking
this
picture.
game.
Yeah.
And I will tell you though, it is an astronomical amount of fun when you're just playing with your buddies and there's 4 of you in a Jeep and you just go sailing off a cliff in a car and it explodes and you all die and nobody cares. It is, yep. I love this game. I would, yeah. So,
interesting.
I'm just hoping it gets better sooner, faster.
I asked you this already, right? Have you tried Fortnite? Did we have this conversation? You should try
I know
this.
Fortnite plays better. It is I don't know if it's a better game. It's just a different style of game. It is available on the Xbox, and it's
very
not
similar. It's free,
and
it plays way better because it uses kind of cartoony graphics and they draw faster. So I think it's a nice compromise, frankly.
Yeah, there's some mechanics of the game that I don't like. There's like a building aspect to it where you can actually just build a building around you.
If I wanted to play Minecraft,
right?
Guess which game I'd play?
Fortnite.
Right.
And then one last quick thing here on the agenda, Paul. RTM is here. That's the word on the street.
Yeah, I'm so convinced that this has happened that I published a story about how this magic window thing I keep talking about. It's this concept. I keep taking credit for this. I think I invented the notion of the magic window.
That's a lot of credit.
I know. I sometimes I say things like that and it drives people crazy because they're like, "What are you talking about?" Microsoft talks about this. I for some reason I have it in my head because I'm mental that I came up with this notion. But regardless, there is this thing I called it. Some people may call it the magic window, which is this period of time. If you're on the insider preview, you can switch back to the normal development ring, like just, the public ring, without any repercussions, right? So if this was a month ago and you're like, I think I'd like to get out of the insider preview, your options would be you could change rings. You could go to the slow ring from the fast ring, or you could just pave your computer over and start over from scratch. You can't really, because you can't get out of it. Once you're in it, you're on the train. But the train pauses at the station when they complete development of the product. And one of the many reasons we might think that this is the RTM build is that we can now get off the train. And so if you go into the insider preview section of settings under, I think it's update and recovery or whatever it's called, you can get out, no problem. So you reboot the computer, you're out. And the way this has always worked, and the way I assume this works now, is that you will now get the normal cumulative updates, the what does Microsoft call them? The quality updates that typically come out once a month. And of course, you get the app updates on the normal channel now, not on any expedited channel going forward. So, if you wanted to test RS4 and you were doing that, and now you just want to be on RS4 for a while, not a bad idea, by the way, because even with the overlapping skip ahead stuff these days, the next version of Windows is typically a little less reliable, more buggy. And, the new features don't really happen that quickly, at least the interesting ones. So you might want to stay on the normal, stable channel for a couple of months. Yeah. Which is what I typically do. Actually, this time I really stretched it out. I was pretty much on RS3 the entire time. But I've literally spent the past 2 days-ish, I guess, pushing all of my computers now to RS4 and then exiting out of the preview program. And for the computers that weren't on the preview program, like cat hair everywhere, I put them in the preview program, put them in fast, downloaded the build, rebooted, and then exited the preview program. So I think as of right now, basically all of the computers I would ever use are on RS4.
Yeah, I'd like to go down that route, but I don't want to screw with my main computer, and I'm just going to let it happen au naturel.
Oh, I screwed with my main computer. Actually, when I get back from Colorado, I'm probably going to PC reset this thing, but it's okay.
Yeah, we'll see if it fixes the blurry cam. Although you look
It's never
Surprisingly sharp today.
Yeah, it's well, I got a lot of sleep last night. Oh, you mean the camera? So, yeah, I can't explain it. I don't know why it's blurry sometimes. I don't know why sometimes it's not. It's the magic of software.
It's much like frame rates on PubG on the Xbox. We don't really know.
We just know they're not good.
Yep. You got anything else for today, Paul?
Well, I'm Windows Weekly today, and then as soon as the show ends, I'm hopping in the car with my wife and kid and heading to the airport. So exciting. I don't want to go on to this for too long, but I've talked about how terrible it is flying from here because I'm not used to how things work. So I'm flying on American on this particular flight. It is out of Philly, which is like an hour and 15 minutes from my house and still the closest airport. And, you get that priority upgrade thing for $30. And what it upgrades you to is boarding class 4.
Whoa.
That's you pay to get to 4. I got an exit row seat. Shouldn't I be in like 2 or maybe 3 already? Like, don't you want us on the plane first? Shouldn't we have the space for the bags? No.
All I'm saying, Paul, is if something does happen, you will have priority disembarkment.
I'll have priority exit, exactly. Hold on, everyone, show me your boarding passes. I want to see what class you're in because that's how we're doing this.
Which one of you jerks were in priority group 1? Yeah, you're last.
Which one of you dicks put your bags right above where I'm sitting? You? Yeah, no, you go to the back of the line. That's where the tables are going to turn. Because that's going to be my priority at that moment.
Yep.
Retribution.
Yeah. Well, you
How
enjoy.
About you?
I will not be envious because flying is, I don't know, something I don't particularly enjoy unless maybe I was piloting the airplane, which I've only done once in my life. When I took an airplane flying lesson that my wife got me.
Yeah, I always wanted to do that.
Yeah, I was going to go further until I realized I was poor, and flying licenses are expensive, and then all the lessons to get the license are even more expensive.
Yeah.
And,
you know who Alex Gumpel is, right?
Yep.
That guy from Twitter. Yeah, he took us up, me and Mary Jo, my wife, in a small plane. He has his pilot's license. Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah, he's also single, doesn't have a kid.
That's true. Yes. Yeah. I like you probably, I've often contemplated how rich I would be if I didn't have children. And, that's the kind of math you don't want to do late at night when you've been drinking. And
This was maybe like a year ago or something. My wife said, if we weren't married and you didn't have any kids, what kind of car would you drive? And I said, hold on, excuse me.
All of them.
The answer would be cars, plural. I would have 2.
Yeah. Yeah. I told you this, right? Like,
yeah,
our payment every month for Mark's schooling is more expensive than our mortgage. And when Mark was getting ready to go off to college a couple of years ago now, I was like, Mark, listen to me. Instead of college, which frankly 50-50 is useless, I'll buy you a Porsche. I'll buy me the same Porsche, and we'll just call it even. And he was like, oh my God, that's, he was 18 or something at the time. He seriously considered this briefly. And then my wife was just like, what the hell is wrong with you? Like, why would you put that idea in his head?
Yep.
And I'm like, Stephanie, we will save money. And I'm pretty sure he will be no more or less ahead in life as a result. I mean, the whole equation on college is very, very unclear, I think.
Yep. Growing up as a kid, and both my brothers will confirm this if you ever meet them, every time the mention of college came up in my house, my dad always said, there's always the Army. After that word.
Yeah, this is true. I feel like I matured late, and and like a lot of guys do, I guess. But there's a part of me, and I still think like this. Like, I almost think I would have been better off if I could have gone into some armed service and just had the crap kicked out of me for a couple of years, just to grow me up.
Sure. At
a time when it is desperately needed, Now I would just be a liability. You could use me as a shield or something if people were shooting. But, yeah, I've never grown up to the point where I've been like, yeah, that was a stupid idea. I still actually think maybe I could have used that. That maybe wouldn't have been horrible for me.
So, well, alrighty, folks. Well, that wraps it up for today. Today's show is brought to you by Cloudberry Lab. Check them out, cloudberrylab.com/FRD, or just click the little advert that's right down below. We'll catch you right back here tomorrow on Thursday, and I'll be here, and Paul will be in the middle of a very large square state. Have a good one.